This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, my name is Novo Man, and welcome to another Technology Review Council session. And we're very, very pleased to have Austin Stevens from Vevent, or Vevent, however you want to pronounce it. But he's going to show us some really cool stuff around the virtual world in terms of events and planning. He's also, as a consultant and owner of the business, is going to take us through some, shall we say, considerations for planning your next virtual event. So, Austin, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. And don't forget to turn on your presentation.
Yeah, hey everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Nov. My name's Austin Stevens. I don't know if you can see me. My camera was up. It's down now. I don't bandwidth issues. One of the many struggles of virtual events that we all face. But it's a beautiful thing actually, and I hope to kind of dive into some experience that I've had. Kind of go into where I've taken things, some suggestions on how to build successful virtual events, and really just overall pivot, and really make the magic happen. Share my screen real quick, get the slideshow going.
And we see it fine. Thank you.
See it? Perfect. Thanks. So we're going to talk about pivoting to virtual events, strategies in the future. So a little bit about myself. I've been 10 years in the industry, probably a little bit more than that. I actually started a marketing company in college, and I'm a unique generation that has actually grown up with technology, since the VHS tape and the cassette uh, see, the evolution of the gaming system, the computer, the iPhone, the iPad, virtual reality, augmented reality. And I got into the events industry in college, hosting local events, using tools like MySpace and Facebook when they first came out. And then, if you guys know about the marketing evolution, paid social marketing is the highest thing now, since sliced bread. So I like to think that I was kind of in when it was just college students and recruiting for special events that I host around that atmosphere. From there, I transitioned into the enterprise space, where I started with a company here in the Tampa Bay, Florida area, and really helped them accelerate with one-to-one broker style events. So there's expos, there's broker style events. We'll get into that a little bit later. But every event's going to have a purpose, and that's bringing people together, delivering high level content. And throughout my years, I've pivoted to a couple different companies. The virtual event transition has been a big one. Virtual event platforms have been around for some time now, but we really haven't researched it or sought out solutions for uh, an impactful event until COVID. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and what the impact has had on the industry as a whole, and how we can really make the magic happen. And then where do we go next? Of course, how do we set you up for success for the future? So I want to do things a little differently here. Typically, when I speak at events, I like to walk around a room and get everybody involved and really just kind of tackle what's keeping you up at night. And that comes with engagement. So, like live events, engagement's key, and questions should have good answers. And I want to know what's keeping you guys up at night. So let your questions rip, either via chat or jump in, raise your hand, and we'll pause, and I'll tie it into the presentation as best as possible. I'll also have a Q&A at the end too, for anything that I might have missed. Next, yep. Somebody
I was going to say, did you want those questions ripping at you now?
Not all at once.
Yeah, I think maybe on the minds of at least this audience, in some cases, some are people who are actually creating the events for members and such, and
Perfect.
others are attendees. And I think one of the key things, and you talked about the engagement, it's this: how do I come and get both learning and networking? Those tend to be the two highest things that I have seen kind of driving any event, whether it was the physical or the virtual. with the idea that I'm going to walk away with a whole bunch of new friends and new thoughts, if you will. And then, so you've got another question sitting in there, so we'll add that from Janice saying that, how to get people to pay and stay for, I like that, pay and stay. That's a new one, for the virtual event that has replaced the in-person.
Yeah, yeah. So pay and stay. So that's going to be, that's
that
a
one.
great question. Yes.
It is.
And I'll tell you, Janice, you know, pay and stay is a difficult question because you're looking at the post or kind of like the middle of the panic, right? That could be going up higher again. And what you saw was an increase of everybody doing virtual events. So a lot of attendees feel it's like a webinar, right? Or it's like I can just show up and pin it in my background and I can go do other work. Yeah, you can. But in order to get people to stay, is you want to get the engagement going on during your sessions. So grab them in right away, right? And that's my biggest advice is a fireside chat, something where people can hear a conversation like Nova and I were just having, which makes you go, ooh, let me ask that question. Let me jump in
Yeah.
more, right? Just how I changed up the flow here, and I said, hey, let the questions rip. You're engaged already, right? You want to stay for the rest of this presentation rather than pin this and say, hey, what's going on in the background. That's one way. There's some other unique ways that event companies are pivoting, and that's with things like wine tastings. Things like where, hey, tasting, but at the same time, we're going to have great content, great action, great networking. And what was this? I don't know how I'm going to survive now that Costco no longer has free food.
Well,
I
we
don't
know
know
why
about that
Mike
one,
has
Mike.
been going to the conferences, so there we go. That answers it now. But I think, and in a general sense, also the perspective of the human resources world. So we understand that events can be multi-company, multi-audience, multi-whatever. But in some cases, you could do a company event, and maybe a little bit of maybe it's covering a couple of things. It's the challenge for a company to bring their employees back together in some event for whatever messaging updates, whatever. So I know you'll be able to touch on those things because that's kind of other things you've done as well with this. So yeah, we'll see what you're going to. But we have peppered you with those questions. You got what you wanted. Be careful what you
Yeah,
ask
it's
for.
perfect. Yeah, hey, keep them coming. Keep them coming. I mean, I don't think we're going to be doing anything Star Trek or Star Wars wise, maybe. That would be cool. I'm a huge fan. There's Star
Yeah.
Wars stuff all in my office here. But first let's get into why we did live events in the first place. Because if you're doing a virtual event, you probably have done a live event in the past, or you thought about doing one. And really, it's for engagement, right? Engagement aspects of a live event. I can't tell you how many times I've hosted events for sponsors that spend maybe 10, 20 grand, but then walk away with a nice $200,000, $100,000 deal, right? Depending on your solution. The idea of a live event is to generate relationships, generate contacts, generate sales, right? A lot of live events have been lead generators. That's really the main reason why. But at the same time, there's really three ways to look at this, right? So you have sponsored events where you're reaching out to somebody to provide a solution for your end users, and they're spending a figure to get that access. Then you're looking at content style events where maybe that's a webinar, right? Where we're actually just putting out content to look for prospects to come to me, and we're just trying to influence the light bulb going off. And then you have content where it's more of a membership, right? Something more around something like where we're here at today, where it's really helping each other build a community, tell you, hey, this is how where we see the future going, and let's come together and keep the pot stirring, I guess you could say, and leading into the future. COVID and the impact, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Everything's frozen, right? I just went up to Massachusetts and literally everything was still closed. I'm here in Florida. Things are opening up a little bit more, but what's even more of a funnier story is I was on my honeymoon. I was actually on a cruise in the early March before COVID went crazy, and my wife and I get off the cruise ship and all the toilet paper's gone. right? That was not something we were thinking of, but at the same time, we're both in the events industry.
Mm,
So we both knew that we had to pivot in some way, and that the events industry, let alone hospitality, we don't know when it's going to come back. It's slowly but surely, but I think the pandemic has kind of got a big hold on a lot of things. The hotels have closed. A lot of the venues that you've done live events have kind of closed up. Budgets have frozen. So maybe you've frozen your budgets, right? I know my company's frozen budgets. I know a lot of companies have kind of said, I don't know what to do yet. But now we're at this stage where you have to do something, or you're going to be more than frozen. You're going to be frozen permanently, right?
yep.
And the idea is to defrost at a nice rate to where the end users, the audience, the sponsors, the ROI, the why, the engagement, everything that you do events for comes back. Growth's really halted unless you're enabling. So unless you're Zoom, your Logitech, companies that are doing really well already, your growth's probably halted because you're not doing events. And there's a lot of tech events out there that a lot of companies do to find those prospects and shake those hands to mill up meetings further on post event, which then keeps growth going. The panic, obviously, I don't think I need to talk a lot about that. The panic's what fueled it all, right? And that's still going on. And I don't know what light is at the end of the tunnel, to be honest with you. But I can tell you, going virtual is probably going to be the best, safest way to go right now, and then figuring out some hybrid approach midway next year, and then having some kind of milestone to check things as you go. The plus side of this is you get more opportunities to bring more people together. While hotels and, like Nov was saying, he likes all the free food at the Ritz Carltons and things like that. This is we don't have that, right? We don't have that cup of coffee anymore. We can shake hands and meet each other at. We don't have the lunch tables we can do that with. But the positive side is we can bring 10, 20, 50 times the amount of people to our events to see our content, to see our message, to really get our billboard that we've done all of this digital advertising for, take that billboard to the next level and now become the subject matter expert. These are just some graphs I pulled to show you. Basically, a lot of events have moved online or they've been postponed. Only a very few have been are actually moving ahead with live. Maybe those are geographical. I will go into saying as we get more into a hybrid into the future, I would focus on doing maybe a hybrid event, but going geographical as things start opening back up, no matter depending on where you're at. So if you're targeting enterprise organizations or mid-sized organizations, go what's within your backyard and maybe do a road show, right? Do a Top Golf, do a beer tasting, do something that's going to be get people out, but also give people an opportunity to join virtually as well. You're looking at the marketing efforts, I guess you could say. If you're going to do virtual events, you got to have marketing polished off. I think that's the most important thing. If your marketing engine is just garbage and it's just not running, you're not getting leads, you just know that something's broken. I don't recommend building a virtual event yet, because your marketing is going to be your biggest asset for bringing your end users to your event, right? And especially if you're looking at a sponsored event, right, where these sponsors are paying you to get people in front of them. You also want to see the future, right? Where's the video US, the video conferencing market? I mean, look at 2027. It's just going, right? It's just booming and booming, and it's never going to stop. I mean, I don't know how many sci-fi buffs we have out there, movie enthusiasts, but Ready Player One, great movie about virtual headsets. You throw it on, you go in this virtual world. It's gaming. It's an office place. That could very well be the future in 20, 30 years, where nobody leaves their house and everybody's in this virtual environment. Kind of scary, kind of cool. This is why we're here. So pivoting to virtual events, you want to replicate that live engagement as best as possible. I can't tell you how many deals I've probably have closed in my lifetime just at a lobby bar, right? Having a drink with somebody after an event. Choosing the right platform and choosing the right format is going to be a big play, right? You want to replicate the engagement in some way, and that's going to tie into that earlier question with pay and stay, right? The more engagement you can offer your attendees, the longer they're going to stay, right? And what's sad is a lot of platforms out there keep you on one platform and then you get bored, right? You get that software fatigue that many of us might know. What I recommend for that is doing a hybrid between multiple platforms. I'm going to talk about some platforms here in a couple slides, and it doesn't hurt to take a hybrid approach, right? Use one platform to deliver your content, use another platform to do engagement. Maybe that's a separate Zoom call, maybe it's a roundtable, maybe it's a wine tasting, maybe it's I don't know, anything you could think of. I think the biggest thing here that we can all help each other with is coming up with those new and exciting creative engagement activities that we used to do, but how do you do it virtually? I know I used to have a client that used to do whale watching after every conference and take all the clients out and do that out in San Diego. You can't do that right now, right? So how do we do that and replicate it? Gamification, good addition there, Brendan. I know one of the platforms I'm going to talk about, Mood Up, which I believe you all seen a demo for as well with Danny. He's got a gamification model built into his. So as you go around the booth, you get a badge, right? Live events. What do we have at live events to keep you engaged? Bingo, right? How many times have you had somebody come to your booth and say, "Hey, can you sign my badge?" And you get a chance to win something. So incentivize your attendees, because we're all doing multiple Zoom calls a day, right? We're all doing multiple things every day, and it's been going on for another year, right?
At least.
Yeah, the assurance of learning. Yeah, it's great, Brendan. So good news, technology to the rescue, right? So this is where the platforms come into play. We've all have Zoom, right? We all have GoToMeeting. It's a great tool to bring everybody together, but I think the biggest question in the air as well with everybody, I think Janice hit it right on the nose in the beginning, is engagement, right? You pay and stay, right? How do you stay? How do you get people to stay involved? And that's evolving outside the software fatigue aspect. I think that's going to be the biggest solve. If we can solve that for the future, you're going to just win all the time. The other importance is finding your why. I always talk about this a lot, whether I'm helping somebody succeed in sales, marketing, companies, it doesn't matter. Always find your why. Why are you doing an event in the first place? Right? Is it to bring people together? Is it to deliver high level content and be the subject matter expert? Is it to help other companies sponsor your event, make some money that way, and then at the in turn help them succeed? Right? Find that why and then build your event around that, because that passion and that your heart will come into it, and then everyone else will have that success as well. There's a lot of event companies out there that just do events to do events and to make money, but they've kind of lost that passion over the years. Finding that why, content, engagement, roundtables, keynotes. What I'm getting at here is design your format around that why. So if you're doing, I don't know, an IT conference, right, or an IT event, do you want everybody to do a hackathon maybe? Do you want to get some engagement there? Do you want to just deliver a keynote and then maybe spice it up with some end users? Think about your audience, think about your demographic, think about the format, right? So all these things here are going to lead up to a successful virtual event. Format, audience, execution, and analytics. Analytics I threw in there because a lot of platforms are offering it. Some platforms don't. Some may be more robust than none. But it really depends on what you're doing. Are you running an event for sponsors, and it's important for them to see who stopped by their booth? Is it important for you to see who's coming to your event and break it down on a really analytical level? But at the end of the day, find your why, right? Put some heart into it. It'll show. And that's probably the biggest thing I can offer. And the only reason why I say that is because I love technology. I love building virtual events, and it's made an impact, for the events that I've hosted so far. Platforms and objectives continued. So we have a couple different platforms, right? There's tons of platforms. No doubt that I mean, some of you can probably Google virtual event platforms and see results from Hoova, Zoom, Six Connect. I mean, there's tons out there, but really we want to talk about kind of three, right? There's one that's video only, similar to what we're doing now, right? You have Zoom, you've got On24, you have Hopin, great platforms to have engagement, but at the same time deliver webinars, deliver something that's just not another Zoom, right? Not another PowerPoint presentation. And this is good because if you're doing an event, it's gonna be longer than an hour, right? If you're doing an hour-long webinar, your Zooms, your On24s, I mean, these are perfect, right? Little micro events, something like we're doing now, GoToMeeting. But if you're trying to host an event with an agenda where you may have, say an end user, somebody speaking from, say, Amazon, and then you have a sponsor speaking, you really want to choose more of a robust platform to keep the end users engaged and kind of on their toes, right? Prevent that software fatigue. The other platform is multi-room. I just kind of call it this because I like the Remo aspect. There's a couple companies out there that have white labeled Remo. That, and there's companies like Engages that also has the ability to do multiple rooms. Engages and Six Connects are pretty similar. I'd say they're probably up in the top 10 around being able to have fully immersive but multiple rooms. What I mean by that is being able to host a keynote in one room, then have a breakout in another. And then maybe you want to go down and just have a conversation with your neighbor, like you see in this video here, which is one feature I absolutely love, is which replicates live events to a T, is, hey, having that small talk at a table before the keynote starts, right? I think if more and more platforms could have that feature built in, we would see a lot of success and more of an upswing into the engagement and staying aspect, to touch on that question. And then you have fully immersive, which is things like Six Connect, Mood Up, vFairs, and these are build your booths, right? Very much like a live event. You can walk around an expo hall and walk in, talk to somebody in that manning that booth, and so forth. Really find your why and figure out what platforms for you. If your audience is not tech savvy, I would go with a Zoom, right? Or a GoToMeeting, or something like an Engages, something very, very simple. If you have an audience that that are, age, more tech savvy and, love the virtual aspects, and that's going to make an impact, I would go more virtual. The beauty here is that, companies like MoodUp, which I'll show you a video here in a second, are companies that you can really mold for the future, to be honest with you. I've looked at a lot of platforms, and one thing I love about MoodUp is the fact that you can mold it and customize it much like you're playing The Sims video game, and at the same time make it as complex as possible for the most tech savvy person to as easy as possible for the least tech savvy person. Really make it to where it's just, you load it up and you walk right in and you're watching a keynote presentation. I'll play this video here for you, give you an example. Oh. Ah, thanks, Nov. Let's see here.
Yeah, I'd mentioned to Austin that his screen was cutting off for a lot of what he was presenting in terms of the slides, so get that readjusted. I'm not sure exactly the why of it, but
is it better now? How's that? Full screen?
We're just not seeing the far right side. I'm not sure. You may have it be at a trying to think with a widescreen type of projection.
Here, let's try this. How's that? Better?
Yeah, that looks good. I think it does. As Mike's point, the challenges of virtual meetings.
Yeah. And that is the difference, right? GoToMeeting, Zoom. I mean, they're all kind of different with tools. And for just to kind of give you guys an idea, I just chose the application to share the window instead of my screen, and GoToMeeting took the default of that window rather than adjusting. So you
we're
should be
back
able to
on
see
track. Thank you.
movement. You see everybody moving though, right? On the right and stuff. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
We're looking good. Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, let's try again.
Is there audio going with this as well, Austin?
Yeah, there's just music in the background, but
okay.
I don't know why it's. I'll save everybody the the pain.
Just talk over it.
Yeah, so as you can see here, this is Boot Up. So I love this platform because you can go from third person to first person. You can put pictures, signage. I mean, think of a live event hall, all these banners, like put a banner right on top of it. Really show your brand, show the upcoming events you have. As a presenter, you'll actually just sit back and present as you normally would in a Zoom, and on the back end, we'll actually pipe it through into that room. When it comes to the lobby and networking, you can create multiple rooms. This is an example of an area I created. Obviously, there would be hotspots on the ground to make it easier to move around a lot more. In fact, I did this just kind of give you an example of what it would look like from one of our live events. And it's as easy as this. What's really cool is spatial recognition coming soon, which I'll get into here in a second. Another aspect, breakout rooms. So if you want to have a one-to-one meeting, you want to go from the conference to a keynote and say, hey, no, I want to have a conversation, meet me in my office. We can very easily share each other's cameras and now go into our own virtual office and have that conversation like we're going to have in real life. This is an example of the expo hall. You can customize everything here. You can put signs pretty much anywhere, video, you name it. Like all virtual events, more objects you add, the more bandwidth they're going to need. But the idea here is to really prevent the software fatigue.
So, Austin, I hate to interrupt you on that one, but on the exhibit hall situation, and maybe I'll ask the question that may be sitting out there. We normally find the vendors are the ones are sponsoring our conferences, and what they want to do is they want to sponsor a booth where we can go and see their product, envision what we're trying to solve in our own world, talk to them, and so on. And I know enough about the Mood Up world that I'll ask this question and let you answer it the way I think you will, and that is, how does that booth interact with me as an avatar? What will I see? What will I experience? What can I get out of that?
Yeah. So the ability to use any device and actually get a 360 degree view is actually a play on psychology and in your mind, right? So whenever you watch a video, you're getting hit with dopamine every time something changes. I don't know if you guys if anybody here has ever seen a whiteboard video, but a whiteboard video is engaging and keeps you watching because you want to keep guessing what's going to happen next. The beauty of a platform like this is you can actually look around 360 degrees. It's like playing a video game essentially. So you even if you don't know what you're doing or you know what you're doing, you're constantly doing something. So the ability to walk into a booth and then click on a video that might be in that booth, an actual screen, you click it. Now I can watch an intro or whatever marketing video that you guys might have created and thrown into that booth. I can get that more information I'm looking for. Signs, linkable signs that just take you to other places to get more engagement. Maybe you put a sign in there that says, hey, want to chat right now? Join me in my meeting room. and that link will take them to your office, and now you both can jump on a screen for more of a private office session. Another cool feature that's already available that I haven't really I'm building out right now for one of the other events to do a more of a hybrid with two platforms is spatial recognition. So what that means is you'll soon will be able to walk into that booth and the sponsor, say I'm sponsor XYZ, I'm Austin. You walk in and Nove, I see you walk into my booth. As soon as you cross that line, our microphones are now talking to each other. So I can say, hey Nove, how's it going? Oh, hey, I'm just stopping by. Tell me a little bit more about your company, right? Just as you would at a live event.
Yep.
Um, so I think that's going to be the big thing when we move into the future is being able to say, okay, well, hey, here's a live event, but then here's also this 3D world you can walk into that's going to replicate it and have somebody at the live event man that virtual booth at the same time. That's going to have a lot more volume coming in than in person, especially as we start to open things back up. But I think it all comes down to your why. So if your why is to have an expo hall to show off your sponsors, um, marketing materials and kind of all about them, well, maybe maybe you need to do a 3D atmosphere. Maybe you do something like Engages, where it's more 2D and you have more analytics and a little more ease of typing. But I think you're always going to enter that realm of, is my audience going to be a typing type of audience to ask questions and engage my sponsors, or would it be better to just hit them with amazement and say, hey, keep your mic on and talk as if you were at a live show?
Hmm.
Um, Hopefully that helps answer some of those questions.
Yeah, and to your point about the sponsors really getting into a dialogue with an individual, I know that I've seen some virtual events where they have the exhibit booth, but sometimes the vendor's not there. Let's
Hmm.
start with that. Secondly, it's more self-serve, so I might as well just go out to Google and just do the self-service there at my own leisure. But I think this idea of getting impressions and interaction with the audience that you're bringing to your conference, that's really what vendors want at the end of the day. I suspect that some of the diagnostics that you may show us soon would be who's visited my booth. So I have the avatar's name and maybe email or something like that from the registration rolls. All those kind of things that we would normally get from a badge scan or something like that.
Yep, you got it. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's where the analytics come into play, right? To be able to
yeah,
say, hey, this person stopped in. And that's where you would tie in gamification. So I would actually do more of a gamification style expo where it requires the avatar to hit certain hotspots
mm-hmm.
into each booth to ensure that they go into each one. You're getting some kind of engagement. If a sponsor's not there to engage the prospect, that's on the sponsor, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You should be there, right? And I think setting your partners and your sponsors up for success is one thing that I've always kind of made it very important in one of my process in my tenure is to saying, hey, this is the type of event and this is how you're going to win. Right? Here's the companies. Here's a wish list for you. Here's a list of companies that you want to see. Hey, guess what? I'm going to have my team help work for that, right? And then at the same time, I'm on site too, to where I might put my effort in and say, hey, who do you want to talk to? You want to talk to John from Amazon? Perfect. I'm going to sit next to him at lunch, and then you come up and say hi. I'll give you my seat, right?
yep,
Little things like that you could do at live events, but how do you do it at virtual? And I think that's where more engagement, the coolness, the shock and awe factor, but molding it around your audience is going to be key.
yeah,
If you have an audience that's not tech savvy, doing something like that may not be the best route because they're going to fall off. They're going to have more tech support than anything, or they're not. Maybe they don't have an up to date computer. Just giving you guys the hurt. The real world here. I'm a pretty straight shooter, and you know, certain platforms serve certain purposes. Just find out your why, and
mm-hmm.
one platform may be good for one event, but it may not be good for another. But keep the future in mind. So also make sense of the investment. So if you're going to invest in a platform, is it make sense to invest in a platform that you can use year round? So companies like MoodUp, VFairs, Engages, you can essentially use them year round. You pay for an annual membership. Companies like Remo, and others, right? You can pay for one-off events.
Yeah.
So figure out what your budget is, figure out your audience, and then really figure out which platform is for you. But make sure you're pivoting into the future, right? Don't be the last one standing saying, "Hey, I got virtual events figured out," and then everybody's going to hybrid, and there's something else that's awesome, and you're just figuring it out now.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question I don't expect the answer right now, but I will tie it in with a later question. So, knowing things like an avatar-based situation, like a mood up and so on, there's a sense of I need to learn how to use the environment before I can really attend it and make the most of it. How do you address that? And we've maybe talked about that towards the end.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll talk about that at the end. Actually, I think
Okay,
that's
perfect.
it's a little more. I think where we come in, and so make it happen, right? And this is going to come into kind of tie into what you were saying there, Nov, in a little bit. A team, right? You need a team to make this happen. You can't just do it by yourself. You can't depend on two people to do it. You need at least three or four, and it's going to take probably the team you already have and maybe some external help as well. You want to make sure you have the infrastructure, the budget, right? And you want to make sure you can easily repeat the event. So if you build something out, you want to make sure you can rinse and repeat with ease. Be able to say, hey, marketing department, here's the collateral I need, here's the new signs, and I should be able to just switch it out with ease and then be able to launch my next event tomorrow, right? And that is going to help you in the agility aspect. And then at the same time, accelerate your ramp up period. And what I mean by ramp up is for every event, live or virtual, you need to figure out how long it's going to take you to make the magic happen, right? Live events, I can tell you what I'm used to. I do enterprise focused C-suite executives. I mean, that's my bread and butter, mostly CHROs, and there are attendees. It takes at least 6 months to get a base of 50 of those executives to commit to a live event. It's a little different in the virtual space, but you want to be able to do it uh, with ease. So to kind of answer your question, Nov, how do you do it, right? How do you bring it all together? And that's learning the platform. You want to. That's kind of what I do, right? So I can come in and I can say, hey, what's your objective? What do you want to do? I can do a discovery call with you and I can say, this is what I recommend. I'll recommend a platform. You can choose it, you cannot choose it, and you can still use me as well. And what I'll really do is use my tech savviness and my experience along with my assets and team that I have and say, hey, here's a success coach. Here's someone who's going to give you that playbook, do a discovery call, make your right recommendations, and then kind of hold your hand and teach you how to make a successful event, let alone service it and build it out for you. So if you just want to say, set it and forget it for me, Austin, happy to do that, right? Happy to say, hey, here's your playbook, right? Who's your producer? Do you need a producer? Do you need a marketing person? Do you need, the A plus talent for the events industry? If you need somebody in operations, I got it. If you need somebody in sponsorship sales, I got it. You need somebody in end user acquisition, I got it. So that's where if you don't have it internally, I can support you externally with part-time or full-time staff. But you should be good with your current team that you probably already have at your companies, and I basically would just come in and teach them how to do it, and then get you running full steam, and then you can still use me on the side to bounce questions off and use me as a support role.
So,
At the
Austin,
end of the
the
day,
question that
help you
comes
take
out,
the guesswork out of your virtual
yeah,
events.
yeah, your point about the recruiting for the A talent, I know that in some cases, I won't mention any of the boards I've sat on, but quite often we have an event planner who will go out there and help us. But board members and members and volunteers, we're all scrounging to go contact sponsors and that. And to me, we have now complicated the problem because we are now trying to explain an environment in a new way that we're going to do a conference, and we still want you to spend your money, but we don't know the advantage of that. It sounds to me that having somebody with your expertise in there to help sell this idea to them about why I would spend the money for something I've never done before, it's harder for us to explain it than maybe for you to do that. Is that kind of a truism, or am I missing something in there?
I mean, I've kind of given you the secret sauce a little bit here in the verbiage, but it's just sales. You got to hire salespeople to sell things, right? And
Yeah.
salespeople have that kind of that gift, right, where they can paint the pretty picture and make it make sense, and then get the money that you're looking for. Um, that's where those sayings come from. You can sell ice to an Eskimo. That saying never came around because salespeople suck. So um, so so you got to hire good salespeople. If you want sponsors to sponsor your event, you got to come up with that message. And to be honest with you, engagement's key. The platform's going to be key. Building the right marketing collateral to get that message across is going to be key. And then more importantly, and probably more hardest than ever, is getting your business development representatives up
Hmm.
to speed. A lot of tech companies out there have a model where it's business development rep and then your sales rep. Your business development rep, his or her only job is to set up opportunities for your sales rep. Like, I love that model, but in the events industry, most people they do everything. You're an account manager, you're a business development rep, you're a sponsorship rep, right? You're doing everything. Um, if you want to accelerate things, get a good salesperson and get them a lot of opportunities. And what that means is invest in your marketing, right? Get
Yeah.
more inbounds. Do something to get more opportunities, more pitches, and find someone with a high conversion rate that can speak the language, right? That can speak the events world from a live perspective, and then translate that into the virtual world and say, hey, this is what you got at live. I can't give you this, but I can give you the next best thing.
Yep. Yep. Very quick question then. There were a couple of I won't attribute this to a person, but they asked the question: do the avatars socially distance? So I have to say that the humor level is still there. I love it. The question about the idea when we're in the virtual situation, and you mentioned software fatigue, is there kind of a correct length of time, either on a per day basis or a number of days type of thing, that you seem to look at and say, hey, anything over 2 hours of a webinar or whatever the case is are magical things to not do.
Yeah. So yes, I've actually just solved that problem recently with a series. So take a normal event and break it down into a series and call it a series.
Hmm.
And call it a series that builds on itself. You're gonna get um, more prospects to say, yeah, I think I might want to do that or try that. A lot of companies went straight into their live events and going, hey, we're going virtual. It's a 2-day, 3-day event. Now it's virtual. And that's where the software fatigue really was like, wow, it's real. By day two, you've already done a 6-hour event on day one. Now you're on day two and you got to do it again. Um, you start getting people to fall off. So, I don't know if that's kind of answering your question there, Nov,
Yeah, it
but
does. It does.
but
Yeah.
you wanna figure it out. I mean, that's kind of the key. And I wish I had an answer for everybody, but I think we're all going through this together. And
Yeah.
I think the one thing I can say is I'm here to help and provide services that you can't do yourself.
Right. So the one thing that's obvious, and we've all experienced this because we've done webinars for a long time, we can record this, and I think that's I know that in the real the on-site conferences, it was always a tremendous additional cost to have to record all the sessions and then put them out there for the people who didn't get a chance to attend because of travel expenses, time, whatever. So the dynamics of how that whole process has changed. Where do you see the value of recording these things and showing them for later? it, to me, there's the argument is, well, you should have been there at the virtual conference because I'm not going to give you the opportunity to go see this, especially
Hmm.
to Janice's earlier question, pay and stay, rather than I missed the thing, but I'll catch the recordings later. And I think,
Hmm.
in a sense, to your point earlier, if I have other things happening like gamification or networking and that, I've missed that live virtual events, if there's such a way to call it that way. Um, maybe that's what should be included in some of the marketing to show, hey, it wasn't just this webinar. We're doing this and that and that. So I think that we're changing the whole dynamics on how we both market and how we capture the information and how we address the pay and stay or pay for it later or whatever the case is. I'd love to hear your experience on. Then I want to take one more shot at this. Let's change this from just an event to an HR related event. In other words, Paul had brought up, can you do this for new employee orientation where you used to have a group of people being oriented? Can you do that? And have you got clients doing that at all, or maybe a company gathering or whatever? So those two
Yeah.
things.
Okay. So recordings, I think are great, right? I mean, recordings, there's a lot of platforms you can use, and you can actually record your keynote session beforehand and then play it in the, as if it was live, and then field Q&A. There's always going to be buyers who don't want to go to events. I mean, there's buyers from people that send them an email because they have a solution that they need. What made that person buy? It was the message. It was whatever made their light bulb go off to say, hey, I want to set up another call. So if you're doing a recorded session, bring your A game. Do something different that nobody else is doing to make people want to hit that. I want to set up a call with you. Hey, I love that. I caught this conversation you were having. I had a couple questions around that, right? Leave it open ended. Maybe, I see a lot of sponsors, they'll do sessions and they just throw up about their product. Try to get people engaged, like we did here today. I think that's really good because at the end of the day, your prospect may see those questions in that recording and say, "Oh, that Mike had a good question there, or Brendan had a good point there. I wonder, let me message Keynote real quick and see if another has another question." Another aspect too is if you're trying to do virtual events long term and grow it, you can take those recordings and make a learning resource library, and you can also pivot that to recurring monthly revenue. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would go that model, right? Maybe you have a membership where you become part of this, you get these live events, but you also get this whole deck of our recordings, which is just all subject matter experts, and that's what you get, and have fun, right? That's my take on the recordings. And in terms of orientations, absolutely, right? I honestly I think using a company like MoodUp and creating I can put a fireplace in the middle. I can make it look like a college auditorium. I can make it look like a conference room, an office room. I can put videos up that kind of says, hey, watch this training video. Then when you're done, talk with your peers. With spatial recognition, the ability to customize your avatar and show your culture, show your diversity, include now in HR, software platforms like MoodUp really tackle it, right? Allow you to show who you are as a person, allow you to talk to somebody next to you, either via keyboard or spatial recognition, and still deliver content in the same room as you would as an orientation. You can make it even in a classroom. It's really becoming limitless. And then the beauty of being able to use a VR headset, I mean, that I think in the next 10, 20 years, I think everybody's going to have some sort of VR headset. I don't think it's going to be the clunky one you have now. It's going to be
Nope.
something that just attaches to your glasses. You touch and boom, you're already there.
Yep. So you touched upon the learning. Do you have any clients that are using these for learning platforms as well?
Yeah, I've got a couple that are using them for learning platforms. There's actually a really good platform that's just for HR and training, and that's Tailspin.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't touch on them too much. I know the CEO. I'm kind of friends with him, and they've done a lot around artificial intelligence and more of like, hey, this is just a training module, but he also has aspects to where you can get it in with others and get engaged too. Um, so it's definitely happening. Companies like vFairs, conference style platforms, not so much, but that's where I would use a platform like MoodUp to say, hey, I've got it. Now I can do events, I can do workshops, I can do training, I can do orientations. It's really limitless when it comes to that platform versus others may put you more in that kind of vice grip.
Gotcha. Perfect. Well, folks, as we're nearing up on the hour, other additional questions. I will go back to that question about how do I use a mood up? Where do I get trained on that one? That was kind of that last little lingering question. You said you had some ideas on how you train people into that situation.
Yeah. Shoot me an email, Austin at veventservices.com. Happy to set up some time with you, kind of figure out your why, your objective, and then I'm happy to go give you, a deep dive and share my screen and show you kind of how easy it is for the basics, and then help you out any further, with any other needs you might have.
I think I'll say it this way, and I say it with the gray hair that us older generation, we're on our phones. We're probably playing games. We hate to admit that, but once in a while we do play games. So our ability to understand the controls and so on, to me, is not an obstacle. But I think that may present it in other people's minds about how am I going to train these people? I've got 5 generations in my conference today, and I'm not going to. I'll have half the crowd struggling just to get on the app. But as the case may be, do you see that kind of problem, or are we as tech savvy as need be to get into these things?
That's a great question. I think it varies, right? I think it depends on what platform you're using. I think using an iPad is probably going to be pretty easy, right? Because you can touch it. There's some platforms where you may want to use the arrow keys, right? I don't know if anybody here is a gamer, but gaming isn't on the arrow keys anymore. It's W, A, S, and D, to move forward, backward, and strafe left and right. So the controls, and you have Xbox controllers, right? I mean, look at that whole aspect. If you really want to get crazy, give somebody a gaming controller and say, hey, go knock yourself out. I think that's where you got to look at the audience and say, okay, well, you got to determine A or B. You got to make that hard decision, and maybe it means getting some of your clients or attendees and have them evaluate it with you. Say, hey, if you had to choose one of these platforms or the other, which one would you go with? And
Gotcha.
take the majority vote. But for something like Boot Up, it's pretty easy. If you can click the ground or click a blue hotspot, you can move around. If you can hold your mouse down and look around, like you would in Google Maps, you can do a virtual event.
Cool. Mike Benson had asked the URL of Boot Up. Is that?
It's actually Mood Up.
Oh, Mood Up. There we go.
Yep. So Mood Up little.
I was going. I don't remember Boot Up, but I'll ask. Okay, no, Mood
so
Up.
It'd be Mood Up.
Yeah.
And Mike, if just send me an email. I'll put that in here too, Austin.
It's possible that part of this crowd will remember when we had Danny Stefanik present what was at the time LearnBright. He had an auditorium for us. We sat in there. We kept running into one another or standing on the same blue circles, but it was interesting. But that was a nice way in which to get acquainted with it. For some of us that may be old and a little bit off the wall, Second Life has been around since I think 2005 or even earlier as a social experience. It is really kind of the precursor to what we're seeing today in a much more web-based and probably easier to use. But it actually existed with a $2 billion economy behind it. People were buying electronic widgets that were made by others. It's just an incredible thing. I will say it to this audience because we're recording. I will say it to the world. Get ready for this virtual world because this is where we will partially live in some cases, maybe even longer than we think we ever will. So, anything else? Yeah. Oh, we have a couple of questions out there. So we have.
I just filled Frank's question. Yeah, I just filled that. And then I guess one other thing I would say is, you all did Danny's demo and you joined it. And you stood on each other's hotspots and overlapped each other. And that is why you'd want to bring me on, is because to avoid things like that, right? Yeah. Danny's a great guy. It's a great platform. Yeah. But a lot of these platforms, here's what everybody has to understand, is they're built by tech people, right? They're built by people who are software engineers. They're like coding, right? They're building these out because it's cool, not because they understand events, right? So when I
Yeah.
built out my virtual events, you actually have to have more than one hotspot. You got to have multiple hotspots, but you also want to have somebody in the background. So in the instance someone does load in on top of each other, I can move that real quick, right? You have that support so that you have the fluid event that you want to happen, right? Without as least hiccups as possible.
Yeah.
Having a team to run that in the background is really what you need. Even though his platform's set up is more of a plug and play, you
Yeah.
need backup that really understands events to have it run successfully, not a software company, you know?
Yeah. I'm going to say this very carefully, only because I don't want everybody to go run to their living room and then take their virtual comment. But you can pop this stuff on your TV, your smart TV, easy enough to.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're sitting there watching the. So to your point, I may have a little bit of software fatigue, but I'm sitting in the comfort of my family room or living room on a nice comfortable couch. Maybe I have a nice glass of wine as the thing pours on. Hopefully it's not an early morning one, but nonetheless. But yeah, I just, like I say, our to your point, COVID has now accelerated people's rethinking of how, where, and when we do things. And I think you've given us a really good example. I do appreciate that very, very much. Any last questions? Any impressions or stuff you want to leave Austin with? Okay. Well, that being said, Austin, again, thank you very, very much for the Technology Review Council. Again, thank you all for continuing support and interest in this. We got more vendors coming later on. Keep your eyes open. In the meantime, everyone stay well and be safe. Talk to you all
Thanks,
soon.
Dove. Thanks,
Take care.
TRC. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Austin.